Welcome to part 3 of the Procreate Beginners series. I'm Christiane, and in a few minutes, you'll learn the basics of Procreate's editing tools, including transform, selection, adjustments, and actions, all whilst creating an intergalactic artwork. Let's open the app and we'll be greeted by our gallery. If you've joined me for parts 1 and 2, you'll have at least 2 of your own artworks in here. Let me show you some actions we can use to manage our artworks. First, if you swipe left on an artwork, you have the options to instantly share, duplicate, or delete your artwork. I'll show you a great way to organise your work. Simply touch and hold an artwork and drag it over another one. Wait for the blue highlight, then release to form a stack. Once you have a stack, you can give it a unique name. I'll call this one Art. You can tap your stack to enter it and observe the art within. And finally, tap Select in order to select multiple works to preview, share, duplicate, or delete. Also, when we have multiple artworks selected, we can touch and hold to pick them all up. Tap the stack name to exit the stack and drop them directly back into your gallery. Now let's create another artwork. Hit the plus icon in the top right to create a new artwork and select screen size canvas at the top of the list. In parts 1 and 2 of the Procreate Beginners series, we focused on mastering the painting tools on the top right-hand side here. Now, in part 3, we'll go through the editing tools on the top left. But first, let's start painting. Open Layers and let's select a background colour. Remember, this layer is all about choosing a colour, not painting. And we're going to go to the Palettes tab and find the Ascend palette. Select that blue in the bottom left. Next to palettes is the Value Colour Picker, which is great for finer colour selection. You can see a range of modes. For example, H is for hue, S for saturation, and B for brightness. What we can do is make the blue darker by bringing that brightness slider down to the left, around 25%. Nice. Let's go to the Paint tool, and under the painting set, select the round brush. Make sure the size is set to 7%. We can see the percentage in the preview next to the brush size slider, and make sure the opacity is right up. Now let's select a colour to paint with. Tap your active colour, and we're going to find the Flourish palette. Next to it, tap the 3 dots and tap Set as Default. This means that if we tap our colour disc, we see our default palette here. Select the 4th orange along the bottom row. And finally, follow along and we'll draw a circle. Keep holding to invoke the Quick Shape feature. Touch the screen with the second finger to create a perfect circle. Try to keep it the size I have here, with plenty of space above and below and roughly in the centre of your canvas. Tap the Paint tool to finalise. Let's now take a closer look at Procreate's editing tools. From left to right, we have Actions, Adjustments, Selection, and Transform. Let's start with the Transform tool, which is for changing the size, shape, or position of your layer content. Tap the Transform icon and a bounding box will appear around your layer content. Dragging the corners of the bounding box adjusts the content size and shape. Holding and dragging either within or outside the bounding box allows you to move the object. A 2-finger tap will undo your last move. There are 4 transform modes along the bottom menu. Freeform can squash or stretch your content. Uniform retains the original proportions of your content when you resize. Distort allows you to skew your content at angles to create a sense of dimension. And with Warp, a mesh will appear around your content so you can bend and twist the proportions of your artwork. Let's go Uniform. Tap Snapping and turn the snapping toggle on. Now, when we move our circle around, we can see the vertical and horizontal guidelines to indicate our content is in the centre of our canvas. Move your circle around until you see both lines at once. So now it's dead centre. Go to Layers, swipe left on your circle layer and tap Duplicate. We now have 2 circles. Tap Transform again and let's resize the second circle and move it directly on top of the first one until the gap between is roughly the thickness of the line. Because we have snapping still on, we can easily centre this circle over our original circle. Duplicate the second circle. Again, transform the size of the third circle, Make sure you have a similar gap between and snap it to the center. Duplicate the third circle. And finally, transform the size of the fourth circle and center it. Great! What if we want to transform all 4 circles at once? Well, we can select them all. To do this, tap the top circle layer. Doing so will give the layer a blue highlight, indicating that this is our primary layer. Now we can swipe right on each of the layers below to select them as secondary layers. Now with all 4 layers selected, we do have the ability to transform them all at once. But we're going to group them first, as layer groups have more options for us. As we have multiple layers selected, the group option will appear here. Tap it to create a layer group. We can now select the group and transform all the circles within. Groups are a great way to keep your layers organised. To keep track of your layer groups, you can rename the group by tapping it and tapping Rename. Let's call this group Planet. With a layer group, you can still go in and edit each layer individually, but you can also easily select and make certain edits to the entire group. The group can be collapsed or expanded, which is helpful to organise things visually if you have many layers. And you can tap the checkbox to hide the entire group. With any layer group, we can also swipe left and either delete or duplicate the group. Let's duplicate this one for now. Let's turn on our top group and leave the bottom one hidden, as we'll come back to it a little later. And we can tap the arrow to expand our top group and reveal the layers inside. Now let's create our planet. We'll use this group of rings as our starting point. You can only ever paint on one layer at a time, so you can't paint on groups or multiple layers. So in order to colour drop between these 2 middle rings, we need them to be on the same layer. Tap the second layer to bring up layer options and tap merge down. Now we can colour drop between the lines. Let's also colour drop into the smallest ring, the bottom layer of our group. We can also use colour drop to change an existing colour. Let's go to our Flourish palette, hold and drag the second darkest pink and drop that in. And finally, instead of using the merge down option, we can use our fingers to pinch the top 2 layers together to merge them. Now the rings are on one layer, we can grab pure white with a double tap and colour drop them both. Now let's transform these white rings. This time, let's try freeform, and I'll show you a little shortcut to distort without having to jump between modes. We can tap and hold the top left corner node to quickly distort and create the illusion of planetary rings. Drag the node in directly towards the bottom right node, just until we see a bit of the bottom of the planet, keeping an even space on either side. And let's now touch outside the bounding box to reposition the rings a little further away from the bottom right there. Now we've had a look at transform, let's try the selection tool. Right here next to transform. This tool allows you to select and isolate areas of your artwork to paint or edit. I'll do a little demonstration so you can see it in action. Like transform, you'll see a range of options at the bottom here. I'll start with automatic and we'll look at the other options later. Automatic allows you to quickly select solid areas with a single tap. For example, I can tap the inner ring to select it, and now I can make edits to this selected area. Let's undo that. Now follow along and we'll use automatic selection to erase the back part of our rings. We can use the selection tool to work across layers. So if we go to our pink planet layer, tap selection, automatic, and select the planet area, we can go back into our layers and select the outer rings. Here you can see diagonal lines to indicate what is not in our active selection. Now we can erase within the selected area. Tap the selection tool to exit and look at our lovely planet. Now let's collapse and hide that group and turn on and expand the bottom group. Tap and hold the eyedropper to get that orange back as our active colour. Now go up through the layer list and colour drop into each of your circles. By the time we finish this, we'll have 4 different sized, fully filled circles. Now tap the N on the top layer and bring the opacity down to roughly 50%. Do the same for the 2 layers below. But leave the 4th at 100%. When it looks like this, we can flatten the entire group into a single layer by tapping the group and selecting Flatten. Now turn on and expand the top group and drag this layer to in between the planet and the rings. In part 2 of this series, we had a look at Alpha Lock. A similar but much more flexible tool is Clipping Mask. If we tap our middle layer, we can find Clipping Mask just here. Tap it and you'll notice a little arrow pointing down at the layer below. This is how clipping masks work. The paint on the layer below acts kind of like a window, in this case, a planet-shaped window, revealing only a planet-shaped portion of the clipping mask layer. So if we tap Transform and move the clipping mask, we can see those lovely concentric circles within the frame of our planet. Drag them to the top left of the planet and tap Transform to exit. Now let's add another clipping mask. Add a new layer above the clipping mask, tap that layer and tap Clipping Mask. Go to your colour disc and double tap to select Pure White. Go to Brushes, Spray Paints, Medium Nozzle. Make the size around halfway and paint a cute little highlight. The great thing about clipping masks, and what makes them a little more flexible than Alpha Lock, is that you can go in and add more clipping mask layers, hide them, delete them, and just experiment without destroying anything. Because our planet is now complete, we can pinch merge the clipping masks with the layer below. One last example of clipping masks in action is the ability to recolor everything on a layer. Let's try this with the planet rings. If we add a new layer above and create a clipping mask, we can select a brighter yellow in our palette, the 3rd one along, and colour drop to fill the entire layer. The entire clipping mask layer is yellow, but we'll only see it through the window of the rings layer below. And I'm happy with that too, so we can pinch merge them together. Let's add some effects to our artwork. Go to our rings layer, swipe left, and duplicate. Ready to add a glow. Now it's time to explore our next editing tool. On the left of Selection is Adjustments. This menu contains all sorts of exciting effects to experiment with. Let's choose Gaussian Blur. Drag right across the screen to adjust the threshold or how much blur. Let's go for around 7%. Okay, let's look at another adjustments tool that can be super fun to play with. First, let's select the group and create a new layer above. Let's hide the planet for now. Go to the Flourish palette and grab that nice bright green on the top left. Get the round brush again within the painting set and set the brush size to around halfway. Draw a line right through the middle of your canvas, holding at the end to make it straight using Quick Shape. Now boost the brush size up a bit and draw a shorter line on the top and bottom halves of your canvas. Go to Adjustments and almost at the end of the list, select the Liquify tool. Liquify offers a bunch of modes that can be a lot of fun. Let's try Crystals, now we'll try Twirl Right. And you can always tap Reset to get back to your starting point. Now we have even more options at the bottom here to adjust the behaviour of each of these modes. For our artwork, we'll use Twirl Right. Size, pressure and momentum right up. And instead of full distortion, we'll bring it right back down to none. This gives us a more controlled effect and we can give it a little touch to create a beautiful swirl. Go to Transform and using 2 fingers, let's rotate and scale up the size to create a nice spacey background texture. Go to the layer, tap the N symbol and change the blend mode to overlay. And bring the opacity down to around 30%. Bring it down to the bottom of the layer stack. Tap the plus symbol to add a new layer, and let's grab that spray paint brush again, the medium nozzle. Boost the size to maximum, go to your active colour, double tap the black area to select full black, and paint some texture at the top here. Let's go to our layer, tap the N, and bring the opacity down to 50%. Let's turn the planet group back on. We're going to rotate our planet a little, and because it's a group, we can easily use the transform tool to do this. With our group selected, tap transform, and you'll find a little green node at the top. Drag this to the right and rotate your planet. Now we just need a few more planets to bring our solar system together. And for this, let's use the selection tool again. Tap into layers and create a new layer at the top. Go to the selection tool and choose the ellipse mode. We want to create 3 planets around our main planet of varying sizes. So drag to create a circle and hold with another finger whilst dragging to create a perfect circle, just like QuickShape. Let's create another selection at the top left here and a little one at the top right. Now let's go to our Flourish palette and grab that bright green again. And colour drop into our circles. Tap the selection tool to complete. What if we want to move a planet? Well, we can use the selection tool again. Tap it and let's use the freehand method, free drawing around the planet, or tapping to draw straight lines, and finally tapping the start node to close our selection loop. Now we can go to the transform tool and move our selected planet around independently. Now let's use another clipping mask to give these planets some dimension. Go to layers, tap the plus icon, and add a new layer above our little green planets. Let's make it a clipping mask. Make sure you still have your medium nozzle spray paint. Bring the size down about halfway, and let's use the eyedropper to grab that deep blue background colour. Now paint them in. So to make them look like they're reflecting the colours of that main planet, let's grab that golden yellow and paint a highlight on this one. Grab the pink for the bottom one. And grab orange for this top one. And that's it. You've created a beautiful solar system artwork. Thank you for joining me in part 3 of the Beginner series. You've covered a lot so far. Well done. We'll learn more about the editing tools in part 4, including drawing guides and animation. So join me there.